So now that we have GBA games and the Virtual Console, my last guess of remakes in the works were pretty much all proven wrong. Ah well, so it goes. I still believe some of those games will be remade one day, but probably in a drastically new, reimagined way. Not so much as a one-to-one upscaling like I originally imagined. However, the theory still stands. If Nintendo is going to remake some of their legacy titles, they need to act relatively fast, because consumers are expecting the GameCube games to show up on NSO in just a few years, and we've already seen Nintendo start to re-release their GameCube titles. Now personally, I think before we get GameCube, the DS will be the next first-party system we see in the NSO. And then we can probably expect more offshoot titles from some of the weirder parts of Nintendo's history, brought to a modern audience. Regardless, it might take 1 year, it might take 5, but we'll probably see GameCube games eventually added to Nintendo's online streaming library in whatever form that may take. Don't view this video purely as a predictions list. It's more of a speculative discussion. I'm going to start off with some games you've probably heard plenty of other YouTubers talk about, and get more and more niche as we go on. However, every title on this list has some talking points and some features I hope we see happen for their releases. So, starting from most likely to least, what remakes can we expect to see Nintendo show us in the next few years? Will we see them as upscaled ports, or will they be reinvigorated with new life? I have no idea what Nintendo's actually planning to do, but this is what they should do. Let's begin with the most obvious, Metroid Prime 2 and 3. I know, Prime 3 is a Wii game, not a GameCube game. Well, this video is partially a stream of consciousness discussion-like, so yes, I'm only counting Prime 2 as a GameCube port, but the same idea can be applied to Prime 3. Anyways, there's a rumor going around that those two titles will be re-released as upscaled ports from the Metroid Prime trilogy on Wii, but I truly hope we see Prime 2 and 3 also receive full graphical remakes with the love and care like we've seen them do for Metroid Prime Remastered. Prime 2 and 3 are still incredible games in their own right, and they deserve the same level of care and attention given to them. I imagine we'll get Prime 2 released, and then months later we'll get Prime 3. And then even more months later, Prime 4 will finally be released to critical acclaim. But it's just as likely we'll get Prime 2 and 3 shadow dropped as HD upscales just a month before Prime 4 releases. Honestly, I can see it going either way. I'm just willing into existence what I'd prefer happens. I want to take a moment to bring up Metroid Prime Hunters, especially since Stylux and some of the other Hunters are rumored to play an important role in Prime 4. While I don't predict we'll see a remake of Prime Hunters before we get Prime 4, I could totally see Retro making a smoothed out port to continue building the hype. It makes my little lizard brain feel so good because canonically, Hunters takes place in between Prime 1 and Prime 2. And yeah, the single player campaign is nothing to write home about, but Hunter's multiplayer mode with modern controls and graphics would be incredible to experience. Also, it'll be interesting to see if Nintendo includes Prime 2's multiplayer mode in the inevitable re-release. I can see them skipping it and instead they would re-release the multiplayer mode from Hunters with the maps and features from Prime 2. And this could be the ultimate Metroid multiplayer experience. I don't know, might be a bit scummy, but it's food for thought. But hey, this isn't a Metroid video. This is a GameCube remakes video, so on with it. Okay, hear me out. Zelda, Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess HD Switch ports. Ooh, I know what you're thinking. Look at this dude, just the 600th YouTuber to make the most obvious call. Well, come on, I gotta say the obvious ideas first before jumping off the deep end. What would these ports bring that would be different from their Wii U counterparts? Mainly frame rates in Wind Waker and smoother textures in Twilight Princess, but I also hope Nintendo is going to take a few creative liberties with Twilight Princess, specifically the opening. We saw in Skyward Sword they know how to trim the fat here and there, and they can maybe make some improvements and recontextualize events to make the opening hours less infamous, or at the very least allow a skip option for people who know the basic controls. Oh yeah, and the second screen features previously used for the map and item swapping could be easily remapped to hotkey buttons, but if you play on the Switch's successor, you can link up your old Switch and play it as a second screen while the Switch 2 is in its base. This is an idea everyone's had, but I've talked about it almost 5 years ago. Check out that video here. Onward with the easy picks. Super Mario Sluggers. A new game is going to happen eventually, and even if the Switch 2 is out, we'll still see this heavily promoted for the original Switch's install base. I'm telling you, that little system that could is going to get every Mario sports game eventually. I can almost taste Mario Hoops. I just sincerely hope Nintendo and Namco take their time to make a humongous roster we can use for our teams, with intricate perks and chemistry bonuses showing up amongst the most unexpected characters. That was the real fun and strategy of these games. Anyways, expect to see this game. Hope it lives up to its legacy, but we're not going to see the original Mario Sluggers on NSO anytime soon. Speaking of living up to its legacy, F-Zero GX Remastered. Well, personally, I hope they call it F-Zero NX. It would be a cute callback to the Switch's codename, plus it will technically be its own version of this game. What do I mean by that? F-Zero GX was released for the GameCube in 2003, but meanwhile F-Zero AX was released exclusively for Japanese arcades around the same time. The two games were developed with the same engine, but the arcade version hosts some slight differences in its track design, and overall user experience was made for a completely different style of play after all. And even back then, one could use these card readers to transfer data and high scores between the two versions, but we've never seen a proper combination of the two games, until now. F-Zero NX would be the complete experience, having the tracks from GX as well as AX available to play. Maybe with a few exclusive tracks, kind of as a proof of concept for a proper new F-Zero game maybe? But yeah, this GameCube release is still famous for its high-octane racing action. A steady 60 frames per second, which was insane for 2003, and now picture it in the modern age with the best graphics Nintendo can provide. I know, I just mentioned how Mario Baseball will still be released with the original Switch in mind due to the huge install base, and the same deal for this F-Zero game. Honestly, that logic can be applied for all the games on this list, but I imagine this game specifically could be set up and marketed as a recommended launch title for the Switch 2. You could play on a regular Switch, but wouldn't you like to see just how mind-blowing the new graphics and particle effects are on the new system, and all that marketing jazz? It makes sense to me. And this would be the perfect visual showcase while still being relatively low risk for the F-Zero brand as a whole. Let's give the captain the proper spotlight he deserves. Here's another title that's hard to predict if or when Nintendo will make it. Fire Emblem, Path of Radiance, and Radiant Dawn. The popularity of Fire Emblem is so much greater now than it was back in 2005. And to this day, Ike is still ranking as one of the most popular Fire Emblem characters of all time. So remakes of these games are bound to happen eventually. Thing is, the rumors are strongly pointing to a remake of Genealogy of the Holy War being the next release, with maybe Thracia 776 coming later in the year almost as a future-connected campaign, an alternate timeline to the story of Genealogy of the Holy War, first being marketed as a bonus DLC campaign, but eventually getting its own separate physical release. It is a whole separate game after all. However, despite the strong rumors, I think we'll see Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn remasters first. But why? Well, it all comes down to the games that are attached. Remember, Thracia 776 is an alternate timeline thingy to Genealogy of the Holy War, but Radiant Dawn is a straight-up canonical sequel to Path of Radiance. Even the original Wii release had some transfer elements if the memory card could read data from the first game. It would totally make sense for Nintendo to drop both hypothetical remasters on the same day, $40 each or together for $70. And that transferable data could be even more enhanced, maybe including a bonus paralogue to tie up some loose threads between the two games. Question is, will Nintendo also refine the gameplay and mechanics, or just upscale the models? Either way would make people happy, I think. As long as there's a way to play the original ROMs, maybe as a post-game reward. I'd personally be excited to finally have a chance to legally play some of the greatest Fire Emblem games ever made. Come on, Nintendo, we deserve to play Ike's story and see for ourselves what all the fuss is about. Okay, we are now into the weird category. My gut tells me we will see the following games before any NSO release, but not necessarily with a priority rush. Let's see what happens. And hey, if you like the video so far, why not subscribe? Anyways, let's discuss those remakes. Luigi's Mansion. Anyone else think it was weird that Nintendo's re-releasing Luigi's Mansion 2 before 1? In a way it makes sense, I guess. Give Dark Moon its proper time, and then maybe release a remaster of Luigi's Mansion 1? Another reason is playtime duration. Mansion 3 takes on average 14 hours to beat. Mansion 2 takes on average 15 hours. And, well, Luigi's Mansion, the original one, despite being a certified classic, realistically only takes about 7 hours to beat. The modern consumer might not be happy with that time frame, depending on how much Nintendo charges. Luigi's Mansion was one of those games I didn't think we'd see as a Switch port. I mean, we already got it on the 3DS back in 2018, but now that I see Mansion 2 remaster, I'm willing to bet on Mansion 1 coming eventually. So many players will be excited to have the entire franchise all available together on their Switch console.
Oh no!
The Legend of Zelda: Four Swords Adventures. This guy and his Four Sword re-releases, why do you care so much? Well, because it was such a unique idea for the time, and the Switch is the perfect opportunity to show off how great the games truly were. but without the overly complicated setup for the controls. Playing this game single player would control just like it did on GameCube. An online multiplayer is easy enough to imagine, but the local co-op multiplayer aspect, that's where the fun really is. Nintendo might need you to set up 5 Switches to get the full experience, since it seems that streaming to the dock idea will be saved for a future generation. Probably. 1 Switch displaying the main map on the big screen, each player holding a Switch portably so that they can get the personalized second screen experience. Maybe they could have all the mini-maps show up in the main screen and just shrink the main play area when needed or something. But I think the 5 systems idea is such a Nintendo thing to do, I can really see it. What isn't as much of a Nintendo thing is re-releasing this game for free. Well, free with the NSO expansion pass. I don't even think they need to add much aside for some UI text and networking for online or wireless play. However, I do think they should finally localize Navi trackers for their re-releases outside of Japan and Korea. The whole vibe of this game is the full 2004 experience, but with modern technology for a modern audience. And I didn't forget about its often confused with predecessor, Four Swords. This game originally released on the GBA as a bundle with Link to the Past, and then an anniversary re-release was made for the DS back in 2011. That game should be included in this release too, but I've ranted about that long enough in a previous video. Star Fox Assault. What makes this in the weird category? It's a perfectly reasonable game for a remake. Controls and settings were top-notch. It really felt like an evolution to the Star Fox franchise, finally stepping out of 64's shadow. The only reason it became so forgotten is because more people associate the GameCube era with Star Fox Adventures, which is a great game, but not necessarily a great Star Fox game. That's what makes my proposed remake of Assault weird. Nintendo should just focus on Star Fox Assault. Adventures should be playable by those who want to, don't get me wrong, but it feels like that perfect NSO nostalgia trip kind of game. Like, yeah, I want to be able to play Mario Kart 64. It's part of Nintendo's history, but would I pay $40 to $60 to play an HD version of Mario Kart 64? Probably not. You see where I'm coming from? Star Fox Adventures. Oh boy, I want to give it a try someday. Star Fox Assault, I need to know what I've been missing all these years. This is the hidden gem of the Star Fox franchise, and it wouldn't surprise me if this was that mystery action game, you know, the one Namco has been hiring for remaking 3D background textures. To be honest, backtracking a bit, I originally put Luigi's Mansion in that NSO nostalgia trip category, but the remake of Mansion 2 has completely changed my opinion. Oh, how fragile we Nintendo fans can be. Speaking of fragile, Chibi Robo. This is a great fringe example of that. Would it actually sell, or is it an NSO nostalgia trip concept? I think an HD remake would be well received, but would it be worth Nintendo's effort? On one hand, it's a cute game that everybody says is a secret masterpiece, and we were all so foolish for not picking it up when we had the chance. If only there was an HD remaster available so modern gamers can experience it for themselves. But on the other hand, just based on gameplay footage alone, this would be a tough sell for modern audiences to want to pick up. It would kind of only sell based on reputation alone. Really tough to say. I think Chibi Robo deserves that second shot in the spotlight, especially since Nintendo has infamously been horrible at marketing this franchise, and no series deserves to die on such a sad whimper that was Chibi Robo Ziplash. The original Chibi Robo is my most not gonna happen remake on my list. The GameCube had so many hidden gems, and I feel that Chibi Robo strikes that perfect balance of being well-known enough to pique curiosity, while still being hidden enough that many people would experience this definitive version of the first game with a fresh perspective. It would be the most risky GameCube remaster, while still making profitable sense. Sorry, Doshin the Giant fans. The next couple of games, I think we'll see straight sequels or creative retellings, meaning it would be the same GameCube experience at heart, but built completely from the ground up for the modern day. Kirby Air-Ride Ultimate, or a more clever title. Same simple yet frantic gameplay, but with modern graphics, additional characters and machine parts, more courses, more city trial-esque maps, more everything. But if someone just picks it up and plays for a quick round, it might not feel too different from the original release. That's why we're getting this sequel remaster thing instead of an NSO release, baby. I just hope Masahiro Sakurai comes back as the lead director, both for his sake and for the marketing team's sake. Trust me when I tell you, his name's star power is really up there these days. So many Smash fans will pick up this game just because Sakurai worked on it. Another weird sequel remaster thing I could see that you might not expect is a spiritual successor to Donky Konga. Donkey Konga Returns? Honestly, if they think it might hurt the brand of Donkey Kong, they should simply change the art style and just straight up make it a crossover with the Takano Tatsujin series. When I realized Namco were the developers of the original Donkey Konga, everything started making sense. Yeah, the days of the plastic peripheral music game controllers are dead and literally buried now. But you'd be surprised how big that audience still is. Even if you narrow it down to just the Taiko no Tatsujin fanbase, this new Donkey Konga reimagining could be a multi-million seller for Nintendo. Imagine all the fun this bygone era brought, but now with a much more robust soundtrack and years of rhythm game experience under the developers' belts. It just sounds perfect. Plus, wouldn't it be such a Nintendo move to sell like empty plastic containers that you can attach your Joy-Con to and then use it as your bongo controllers? Shout out to Playful. I imagine the packaging like this big DK branded barrel. It opens up from the middle and has two smaller barrel shells, Russian doll style, inside. And inside those shells are the polyester and Velcro straps to connect everything together, plus the actual game case inside. 10-year-old me is just salivating at the thought of this game packaging. Nintendo should make the next Donkey Konga just for that alone. Speaking of marketing specifically for 10-year-olds, remember when Pokemon decided it needed to be angsty, and it kinda worked? Pokemon Coliseum and Pokemon XD, Gale of Darkness. I don't think these games are getting a remake anytime soon, but a reimagining? Taking the same themes and plot points that happened in the original games, but now blended into one more comprehensive storyline? Plus, taking into account fairy type. This game was the perfect fit for those preteens who love Pokemon, but wish there was something more mature for them on the market. Aw yeah, I'm a bad guy who steals Pokemon, but only corrupted Pokemon from other bad guys. Okay, but now I can use these insanely powerful moves with my Shadow Pokemon. Fear me, all who dare to challenge. The point of the game is to make all the Shadow Pokemon squeaky clean again. Huh. It was still good for its time. Trust me, you had to be there. Can you imagine if they leaned into this edgy theme more and made this hypothetical remake a gritty, quasi-realistic retelling a la Final Fantasy VII Remake? Oh man, that would just be so incredible for the memes alone. But in reality, the rates to any Pokemon game are weird and kinda muddled. So yeah, I think one day fans will be able to replay these titles, and Nintendo should give this snagging corrupted Pokemon concept one more try, but Coliseum and XE themselves will probably stay in the past as a simple port available on NSO. I kind of just wanted an excuse to talk about these games. Even if the originals do release on NSO, a remake or reimagining is still possible at the end of the day, and would still definitely sell considering Pokemon's popularity, inspiring a whole new generation of delinquents. Speaking of delinquents, who's up for a game of Mario Party? Mario Party Superstars 2. Man, I loved Mario Party Superstars. Such a great concept of the best minigames on the best boards, from the N64 games. And only 5 boards from 3 games? Seriously, this always bothered me that we didn't get more. So, will Nintendo do this concept again? More minigames, more characters and features, and the main selling point is the boards are all from the GameCube games, each with said game's unique mechanics featured in the board. I could see it, but maybe they would use this title as a live service of sorts, for including more boards in the future as DLC. Like, I don't think the Superstar model would work for a hypothetical third game featuring the Wii and handheld titles, but DLC for an existing game? Totally. It could get more and more retro boards added as DLC once they get the formula down. Honestly, this game as a whole could work best as Deluxe DLC for the original Mario Party Superstars. But it wouldn't surprise me if Nintendo re-releases a whole new game as a sequel with more features and customization options. Maybe advertising some smoothed out textures and added lighting effects for the next console. I think it could go pretty far. Rapid fire ones, here we go. Eternal Darkness Reimagining. This is a game that would get a lot of buzz online, but what are the developers up to these days? It's kinda unclear, to be frank. If there ever was a remake or sequel, that game would be able to stand on its own. So having the original game come out on the NSO, I don't know, it probably wouldn't affect the sales of a new Eternal Darkness game. The original Eternal Darkness is now considered a relic of the past, meant to be experienced from a 20 years later perspective. A new one could happen one day, but NSO isn't holding it back. Super Mario Sunshine. This game needs a remake. Well, really a retooling, because 90% of the game is great and visually still holds up today in my opinion. But that 10% of garbage, oh man, that's some bad garbage. Fix the camera, fix the blue coins, fix the continue system, fix the random spikes in difficulty that are more from glitchy physics rather than game design, fix the frame rate in some places, fix Bowser's voice. Okay, well, that can stay. Anyways, a remake, retooling, reimagining, whatever you want to call it, I think a fix to Mario Sunshine will be a thing eventually, but there's no real pressure of releasing before the NSO, because fans already bought the Mario 3D All-Stars collection, and many of those consumers probably wouldn't double dip so soon. Besides, we all know a Mario 64 remake for the modern day will be released first anyways. Soul Calibur 2 HD Online. This is the only third-party game on this list, because yes, I think Nintendo will be directly involved with the distribution of this game. Well, at least the GameCube version. Yeah, that's right, we want to play as Link, gosh darn it. The HD remake originally came out in 2013 for the other systems, but Namco didn't even consider a Wii U port, and this was a cool remake. It had Hayachi and Spawn included for all versions, and then randomly, 8 years later, Namco pulled it from the online stores. I really think this HD Online remake is coming back for another release one day soon, on all systems this time. But special fanfare will be made for the Nintendo version. All versions will have crossplay, but Link will only be playable online with other Switch users. So, what did you guys think of the list? 21 games, or more, depending on how you count some of them. Do you think we'll see any of these games released in the coming years? What are some other remakes or ports you expect to see soon? Nintendo games or just any games in general? Do you think my theory of needing to release before GameCube NSO is legit? Or will Nintendo just do whatever they want anyways? Will we ever get GameCube on NSO? I don't know, but what do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. And thank you to all the new subscribers. I'm trying to keep up this momentum, so here's a little call to action. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe. And most important, share it along with your friends who like theory crafting game releases, and especially if they like talking about Nintendo remakes. Thank you all again so much for watching. On the road to 1,000 subscribers. Hope to see you all there. Until next time. Man, everyone says Konami's back. Well then prove it and give us DDR Mario Mix 2, you cowards.